This podcast could potentially have adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly the possibility of sexual content. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the Literary Briefs edition. I'm your host, Erica Lance. With me today is the amazing Bo Lake, and our guest today is JP Corwyn. Woo!
Hi!
Woo! Woo! Okay, welcome. Let's talk about what we're drinking. I have very little left, but this is my last one until I go buy more of my San Pellegrino Momenti pomegranate and blackcurrant with gin in it. So I highly recommend this because it's not only low in calories, it's made with real fruit juice. It says so on the can.
And real gin?
I think it's funny when they say that because what else would it fucking be made with? Like
chemicals.
I also like on the can that says I'm recyclable. Please recycle me. I'm a big advocate of recycling.
That's awesome.
That's very cool. Okay. Bo, what are you drinking, my love?
Well, I'm almost finished with this Blue Moon. I probably should have gotten another, but we don't need me to have 2 beers at 11 a.m.
I think your toddler doesn't need you to have 2 beers at 11 a.m.
How fair.
No, he doesn't.
Make a very fun mom, though. I'm just saying.
I'd be so chill.
JP, what about you?
So you were a bad habit inducing person, as you do. And so I have broken out the very last of the lovely single malt Glenmorangie and tied that into my lovely breakfast blend coffee of doom. And so despite the fact that I'm across the pond and it's not morning, it's evening, I am doing Scottish coffee.
I love it. Okay, so first question, always, what is your favorite book of all time?
There is no of all time. There is of X year. So I can go back and point to things like Stephen King's It or The Dark Half, the series from him, The Dark Tower Cycle, which is probably my favorite series of all time. I can look at currently Marlon James' Dark Star trilogy. I can go back to, of course, Everyone Loves Tolkien. It's about the year for me. So it's hard to answer with one.
Okay, what about
what's your favorite book of 1998?
What was I reading in 98? Good Lord. I think I was neck deep in Anne Rice in 98.
Okay, well, that's not something says.
Yeah, so I think if we're talking late 90s, probably Tale of the Body Thief.
That's actually a really good one. I like that one. Okay.
That's like my favorite one.
Really good. Raglan James.
Least favorite book of all time. We warned you that question was coming. So
I know of all time.
Listen to the podcast. We asked that. These are the 2 questions we always ask.
Yeah, I know.
Always ask.
Most readers read again and go, "Oh wait, there's this one. Oh wait, there's that one." Probably, and I hate to say this because I love the author so much, probably Eyes of the Dragon.
Why?
From Stephen King. I love how it starts, but the way the book ends, the pacing of the way the book ends, yanked me so far out of the story. Like the big climax and then the way it ended, it yanked me all the way out of the story. And that part of that may have been the audiobook version, but I don't think so. So I'm going to go with the book that was the biggest disappointment to me because I loved the strength of how it began, but not so much the way it ended.
Makes sense. Okay. I always like to throw Bo off with my new questions that I come up with, and I've come up with some new ones. Well, in your book series, what character would you want to change into?
Probably Yobam.
Why?
So he's had his fair share of challenges, like I think everyone does. But in part, he's based off of not a 1-for-1 analog, but he's based off my best friend, and I kind of like to be him when I grow up. But sidestepping that, he's managed to find a good balance. He's managed to find people and things to believe in, and he still has to fight through the same sorts of hell you would expect any fantasy hero to have to fight through. So lots of good, lots of struggle, lots of bad, and still an open mind. So I think that's probably who I'd want to be.
Very cool. Bo?
What is your least favorite
What is my least favorite? You cut out.
genre?
Oh, probably, and I hate to say this because I want to love it, but frankly, probably just erotica, because so much of it is so completely over the top to the point where it doesn't even do the job for me.
Right.
You should read Val Honey Cummings Sleeping with Sasquatch.
I have heard. In fact, I believe it was that very author who told me I should read that. So
Yeah,
I will.
no, I think
it's
if you don't want just raunchy, naughty sex, you have to find the ones that are humorous or paranormal or whatever, because otherwise it's vanilla or chocolate. Like those are the flavors of a lot of erotica books.
And my issue is I don't care if it's kind of over the top ish, right? That's fine. Like it's fantasy. It's a fantasy. It's fine. But I want to believe in what I'm reading. I want to be able to get lost in what I'm reading. And so much of what I've seen is just it's so too much beyond a certain point that there's nothing to believe. There's no getting lost in it. It's the erotic equivalent of gore. It's just gratuity. And it's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not for me.
No, that makes sense. But you also, you brought up on the last podcast, having done sword fighting and knowing how to fight with swords and stuff like that. And I think that's something I've asked a lot of authors over time when when they're doing a fight scene and stuff, do they use dolls or whatever to mimic like how this would go, or do they watch fight scenes? Like, what do they do to go, this is how it's creating? The same is very much true with erotica writers, and I don't think enough of them do this, is getting whatever, if you got a dinosaur in your story, they make them go to, Mattel, get a dinosaur, just to kind of look at, because they'll describe it, and to me, kind of like the sword play that doesn't make sense, like a fighting scene that doesn't make sense, or when it doesn't make sense, and a sex scene where you go, wait, his hand was what? Like,
so newsflash, ladies, I'm sure this will shock you. Did you know that not every sex act for the first time with a virgin will result in blood? Did you know?
What?
Like, I know. You don't need to shatter someone's hymen. Who knew? Do some basic research, for Christ's sake. Maybe have some actual sex before writing erotica.
And that is the tagline for the show. Maybe have before writing erotica.
I'm a helper. I'm helping.
Oh my goodness. Okay. If you could be any fantasy or mythological creature, who would you be? Or what would you be?
Probably, almost certainly, not just a dragon, but one of my dragons. I won't go into specifics because people haven't seen them yet in the books, but let's just go with dragons, but the kind that actually have a level of intelligence to them, so on.
I like it. Bo?
What is your favorite book to movie adaptation?
Book to movie specifically?
It can be book to TV show if you want.
All right, so Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing was ridiculously amazing. Best Shakespearean thing I've ever seen made into a production. In spite of the changes, I really like the Somewhere in Time adaptation. I really, as far as TV stuff goes, specifically Daredevil, and specifically for a couple of reasons, and specifically Mike Coulter's Luke Cage, are probably the best adaptations of basic story and character I have ever seen translate for something like comics into a show or a video production of some sort.
What is your least favorite book to media adaptation?
Are you ready for the horrible unpopular opinion?
Mm-hmm.
The Hobbit.
That's not horribly unpopular.
That's everyone. That is the true opinion.
There
Yeah.
are so many people that hysterically will account themselves purists that will find something to say it's amazing. No, just no, with a side of no. The ironic thing is the fact that it is such a weird duckling, that trilogy that they've made it into, is actually surprisingly closer to Tolkien's mindset on the book. The Hobbit was not initially something he had super tied to the Rings and the rest of Arda, of Middle Earth. It was, it naturally it fell into the gravitational pull of all of that. But I actually just recently saw an interview with Chris Tolkien that was very clear on that. When he wrote The Hobbit, he didn't super care for it the way he did Lord of the Rings. But when he started writing the Rings trilogy, it sort of necessarily drew The Hobbit all the way back into the orbit of everything else he'd written. So the weirdness of the Hobbit trilogy being such a weird departure, that's the one thing about it that I like, that it was not clearly quite as well put together or as clearly tied as maybe it should have been. But yeah, so least favorite, that's definitely it. Oh wait, I lie. No, there is a worse offender. Sorry, there is a worse offender. The Gunslinger.
Yeah.
I was warned not to watch it because I would probably light the theater on fire. It took me it is such a favorite of mine, and the character is such a favorite of mine. It took me years to be downwind from it, and I do mean downwind from it, enough that I could stomach watching it and appreciate it as a film. It's not even a particularly good film, let alone adaptation. But as far as adaptations go, that is the most egregious offender of bad adaptations. And there, I'll stop now.
I like it. What is your best fan experience?
Being at a convention, doing a live acoustic show with some of the stuff from the soundtracks, and having a couple people sing along. You were so infatuated with my books, with the characters, and with the music that I put out for them, that you learned the songs, showed up to be in the audience when I not only got to do panels and sit at the booth, but do a live acoustic show and sang along, and I could hear you. There is nothing that tops that.
That's very cool. What about your weirdest fan experience?
So there have been times where I lived abroad or just away from sort of my home stomping grounds of Florida. And I would fly in occasionally, as I have done, and go to some either fan event or festival or the like, and hear Corwyn, and people would run over, and I would get the uncomfortably long man hug, and they would wring my hand and speak to me as if not only have I saved their child's life, but they named their child after me. That is how completely ingratiating they have played out our relationship to be. And I would nod and I would smile and, yep, it was really good to see you. Awesome. Thanks very much. And they'd leave. And I'd turn to whoever it is that's there handling me when they're done going, who was that? Who was that? Because not only did they never give their name, because why would they? They assume I know them, but I'm blind. I'm not going to know by face. And if there's some random fan I've met or person I've met, their chances are high that their voice and their generic manner isn't in my memory banks yet. So I got nothing to go on. And the whole 3, 5, 10-minute conversation gave me nothing to go on. So I've left that conversation being as polite as I possibly can, and then turned to whoever I'm with and had to go. I have no idea who the fuck that was. You have anything? Can you give me anything? So that's the worst.
Yeah, no, it's very funny because I've done, podcasts, I've done author stuff, I've done stuff for a long time, and HR stuff. So I've hired and or fired literally thousands of people.
Like you do.
Yeah, like you do. And people will walk up to me and start just talking to me, and I'll be like, oh yeah, no, and my boyfriend is like, who was that? I'm like, I have no fucking clue.
No fucking clue. Yes.
And he's like, but you talk to him. Like, I'm not gonna, like, they obviously have some importance on who I am, right?
There's no reason for me to be a dick.
Yeah, so I don't have to go, who are you again? You just use honey, sweetie, whatever terminology.
Exactly. And try and tease it out of them.
Yeah, and then they walk away and he's like, who's that? No idea. And so now he goes, when I meet people, if I don't introduce, he's now got the cue. If I don't introduce them, then that's how the cue is. that I don't know who the fuck they are. See, Bo now sees this, so when she's at conventions with me, she'll be like, she has no fucking clue who that person.
Well, and the trick I learned to get past this, every chance I get, I play this card. If I'm in a conversation and let's say we three are standing around at some con and somebody comes up and Corwyn, blah 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 blah. Oh, I'm sorry. Have you guys met Erica? Bo, have you? And I will pause because it is a natural part in the conversation for them or one of you to go, "Hi, I'm," and then immediately I'm like, got it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good trick. Very good trick. I like it. Okay, so what is a genre, I'm stealing this from Bo, that you haven't written that you would love to write?
Either supers or sci-fi. Because I've got plans for both of those, but I have not actually written and published anything like that.
What genre are you would like to write, but are afraid to write?
I don't think I'm afraid to write any genre. If I had to pick, and I will, just for the sake of not being the guy who cops out on the question, I'm going to go with mystery. But I try and incorporate some of that into the newer books. So my hope is that I'm already doing that as I go forward. But again, I don't think there's anything I'm afraid to write. But the closest I can come to is mystery because I'm just dipping my toes in that now.
Very cool. Bo?
What is your desert island book?
Probably the final book, The Dark Tower. If I needed a single book ever, I would probably go with that. One, it's huge. Two, it's kind of episodic. And three, it has a very clear ending. Plus, I love the world. So
I like it. So what is your favorite snack while you're writing?
Just coffee.
Just coffee?
Yep, that's it.
So when you
Black
write 13,000 words, you just have coffee?
Just coffee.
Jesus. I would be
I think that was like an 8-cup day, by the way.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
So do your characters talk to you all the time?
Not in the sense I think you mean. So a lot of authors, especially a lot of the more famous newer author tubers, like to sort of lambast people who say my characters weren't behaving and so on and so forth. And I get that, right? Because often that can be used as sort of this cutesy dodge of why my excuse for not writing today is valid. But I don't think it's unrealistic to say that the characters are, they're to an extent, real people. And by that, I don't mean that they have the kind of life that we all physically have here. I mean, barring string theory, that's kind of not a thing. But you know them well enough, if you know your world and you know your characters, if you know them well enough, it's not that they talk to you, but you can very easily hear how they would respond to a given situation. So that's kind of my answer there. It's not that they talk to me in that sense, but it's really easy to think how X, Y, and Z character would interact in a given situation, or how they might say this scene that you have in your head, the final line from that scene. So kind of, but not in the way I think you mean. No.
Okay. Bo?
If you had to co-write a book with any author in the world, who would you co-write with?
He's thinking, just in case anyone's wondering what.
No. I mean, that'd be great too.
No, I know I have to just say that because people are listening and are probably going, wait, did my podcast stop?
No. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. That's a very long pause for people that aren't watching on the tubes of you.
Wow, I mean, this is a stump question. I love that.
There are so many, and you're making me pick one.
Yep, one.
So probably right now, probably Joe Hill.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a really tough call because I immediately look at Marlon James. I'm like, oh yeah, definitely. I look at Richard Lee Byers. Oh yeah, I could do that. I obviously Stephen King. There are 100 100 authors I would look at and go, I would love to sit down and kind of back and forth with that guy or girl or whomever. But if you're making me pick top of the list one, I'm going to go with Joe Hill, just because he reminds me of his dad without being a carbon copy. And he, I think, would bring a lot of interest. Well, obviously he'd bring interesting stuff to the table. I feel like he'd be fun to bounce things off of. I feel like he'd be fun to create with, to paint with.
Very cool. What is your favorite weird food combination?
Yeah, this one has taken some thought. Weird is a very acquired term, because some people think things that aren't that weird are completely weird to them. I have an interestingly, people find it weird, bachelor dish I cooked early on before I learned anything about how to cook. And it was obviously just pasta, but with that, mushrooms, cream of mushroom soup, and tuna. And that really confuses a lot of people, but I really love that combination. I've
That's
also
kind of
discovered
like a tuna casserole.
it is, but a lot of people don't see it that way, and I don't know why. To me, that feels very similar to a tuna casserole, but isn't the same. I'm also the
depends on what kind of noodles you use. If you're talking about spaghetti, then that's fucking weird.
Well, no, I'm looking at stuff like ziti or penne pasta, or even just elbows you could do it with.
I think egg noodles are the best to do that particular dish with, because I've actually made it myself.
Oh, well, then you get it.
Yeah.
I am also weird because, food-wise, because a dear friend of mine, Ed Abbott, taught me this one, and it was such an easy solution that I'd never thought of. Cream cheese with chicken.
Just
Like,
Like
grill your chicken, and your sauce that you're either going to spread it on or bake it with or whatever winds up being cream cheese.
interesting.
I've also done a sandwich at a place called La Bodega when I was recording up in Cleveland, and they do a mean roast beef on rye with a bunch of veggies and cream cheese, and it is not something you would have expected, but oh my God, it's perfect.
Wow. Very cool. Cream cheese can
So-
be used a lot. Somebody said hot Cheetos and cream cheese on the show. And
I-
so I actually bought hot
Okay.
Cheetos today to try that.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
I'm willing to try these things, Bo. I'm willing to go out on a limb.
Ooh.
But we have neared
We
the
should-
end of the episode. Bo, do you have just a riveting question that needs answering?
I can think of one. I don't know if it's riveting though. If you had to dedicate your first novella to a celebrity, who would it be?
Well, I already did. The whole series is dedicated
you?
to, yeah, the whole series is dedicated to Jocko Willink and the men of SEAL Team 3.
Very cool. Very cool.
They taught me an enormous amount of stuff through their writings and the stuff I've seen for them on film, about leadership, about ownership, about drive, about self-discipline. And it's stuff that I obviously couldn't do because they weren't going to give the blind guy a gun. That's a whole separate story. We'll talk about that sometime, maybe if I come back on for another book. But I learned a lot and continue to learn a lot from the lessons they have learned and that they continue to teach through their books and their podcasts and everything. So yeah, first book, and in fact, the whole series is dedicated to Jocko Willink, Leif Babin, and the rest of SEAL Team 3, Task Unit Bruiser.
Very cool. Okay, shameless self-promotion time. Where do people find you and your books?
So, JP Corwyn, if you Google that, I'm everywhere. There's like 30, 40, 50 pages deep. Facebook is JP Corwyn Official. Everything else is /JP Corwyn. Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, the whole shot. And the website is jpcorwyn.net. Come say hi.
Very cool. And your book series is?
The Cycle of Bones.
Very cool. It's been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
We finally got to hang out. It's awesome.
Yes, the fates have aligned. Construction be damned.
Indeed.
Okay, guys. This has been Drinking with Authors, the Literary Briefs edition. I have been your host, Erica Lance. My co-host has been the amazing Bo Lake. Don't forget to do a review first and then like and subscribe. I did that for Bo. And
Very impressive. Very impressive.
leave us a comment and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.